We heard Andrew Berry talk. What's your biggest takeaway from what we heard?
I think the thing that stood out is he kind of admitted that they're going to have to look into restructuring that Deshaun Watson contract. And it's not a surprise because that cap hit is so high. And that's sort of how you structure these contracts. And when you're the quarterback, that's what you do as a GM and as a football team. You look at that quarterback's contract and figure out, how do I move that money around and make that cap number a little bit less so we can bring in more talent, bring in more guys. So it's not surprising that they would consider doing that. It is a little surprising that I don't want to say he admitted it, but he did at least indicate it was possible. So I think that's really kind of the next big domino to watch here.
Yeah, and there will probably be more. Everybody knows they're going to be restructuring contracts to create cap space so they can add. It's not like they're going to create $80 million in cap space, but
right.
They'll be able to add what they would like to build out the rest of the roster.
Yeah, and if you want to swim in the deep end of the pool, you might be looking at a safe. I mean, let's say they like Jesse Bates from Cincinnati. He might cost you $14 or $15 million a year, so you've got to obviously free up that money. I don't know if they're going to spend big on a defensive tackle, especially with Deron Payne getting franchised today, but they're going to spend some money there, I would imagine, and you don't want to just rely on, well, let's bring in a third-round pick or a fourth-round pick to come in and be a key starter on this defense. You want those guys to be experienced, so they're going to have to find money to spend, and that's the beauty of the NFL, right? Like, there's a hard cap, but it's not really a hard cap. You can maneuver around, and you got a bunch of Ivy Leaguers in the front office. They'll be able to figure it out.
The other thing, I would assume, and maybe it's not an accurate assumption, what are your thoughts? Do you think they go and find somebody that is familiar with the way Jim Schwartz wants the defensive line to be played?
It wouldn't surprise me, and I think when you go back to the Philadelphia days, he went out and they found some veterans to add. I'm thinking of a guy like a Chris Long, who maybe didn't have a history with Jim Schwartz, but just more bodies to throw at it. So if you can find some of those affordable veterans to come in who maybe want to try and win late in their career, I think they could do that. And yeah, I do think this team needs some leadership on that defensive side. I think they really lacked that. They were too young. And if you can bring in a guy who knows Jim Schwartz and knows what he expects, whether it's at your deep safety position or a defensive tackle or an edge rusher, even if it's a role player, I think that's valuable, and I think that's something Jim Schwartz will probably push for behind the scenes.